Hey, if I'm on, I don't know if I'm on yet or not, but here I am. And I'm trying to get caught up here. I don't know what I was doing. I could make up a story about how I was uh, abducted by aliens and just now got brought back. Maybe I'll go with that. What do you guys think? Let's see where I'm at here. Hey, everybody. I got to call Mark. I got abducted by aliens and they just brought me back. So, bear with. If you believe that, if you don't believe that, I'll tell you another story. Hang on, everybody. I'll be there just in a minute. Good morning, Maple Bacon Mike. The UFO landed. That's right. By the time you get here, I'll be able to show you the burn marks out here in the yard. Yeah, call Mark back, Brendan. Maybe you'll tell him I'm here. I sent him a note. Hey, Chuck. How's vacation, buddy? How's the St. Lawrence River flowing? And let me see who else about Miss Carol. Miss Carkey is in the house. Welcome. I apologize. I was sitting here looking through some. You won't believe this, but I was sitting here looking up something about some books. Some books that my daughters have on their auction site right now, and I had to do a little research, and I got so involved in that I forgot the time. I was sitting here waiting 20 minutes ago. I was sitting here thinking, I got just a few more minutes. And then 10 minutes after 10, my wife called me and says, where the hell you at? So here I am. Sorry about that. I'm sure Mark will be in here in a minute. If he hadn't give up on me. And my luck is he can't get back on now. Oh, sorry. I'm having a hard time waking up this morning, too. That might be part of it. I found the girls have some really cool books, which I'm not going to tell yet because I don't want anybody else going in there and bidding on them before I get a chance. A couple I'd never seen okay, I'll just talk. H.G. Wells. Now, I mean, what a cool person maybe to have known. The guy that wrote How about time you got here? Where you been? We've been looking for you. Everybody's been wondering where you were at.
You funny, GI. You're number 10.
Good morning, Miss Kelly. The Mickey Bunch is in the room. Oh, I was sitting here looking up. I was just telling them, you won't believe this, but I was actually looking up something about a book.
I would never suspect that.
No, I was looking. The girls have an auction going, and they've got some books, and there was a set of books there that I'd never seen before. Well, I mean, that doesn't mean anything. I hadn't seen a lot of things, but I just hadn't seen this particular set, and I thought, wow, what is that? I mean, because they were by H.G. Wells, which is cool. And but they're not like, they're not like a 20,000 Leagues
Under the Sea
kind of book at all, or War of the Worlds or The Time Machine or something like that. Did he write War of the Worlds? I thought he did. Anyway, they're history books. They're like the history of the world in his terms or in his way of doing it. And so, needless to say, I've got to look into those because I would like to have that set.
Well, good morning, everybody.
And
I was trying. I got in. I've been getting on for 15 minutes, and
well, apparently calling my wife wondering where the heck I'm at. So that's a good job.
I called my wife and I called your wife and said, "Is he laying out there in the yard or something?"
Well, I told everybody else before you got here that I've been abducted.
Do we need to call in a dust off and get him picked up? What's going on?
I got picked up by aliens and they just set me back down.
Well, I know you've had a major internet issue, and I thought, well, maybe it's just not going to work today. But
yeah,
I'm glad to see you.
Glad to see you too. Yeah, yesterday, guys, I came out here and sat down.
And immediately started freaking out.
Because my internet quit working. I was sitting here trying to work on my show, and I just sat down and started looking up stuff. I do that, and I couldn't get anything to pop up on my screen, and it said you have no internet. To which I said, "Oh bullshit! I'm just not. It's not." Because sometimes I get that message, but I am on, so I don't know why. Even before we came here, I get that every once in a while. But I couldn't get it to come on, so I walked over to the wall where things are, and I made sure things were plugged up, and it looked like the lights were on. Now, not all the lights were on, but I didn't catch it. And so I made a phone call, and they said, well, is it doing this? Go unplug it. Do this for me, unplug it, and now plug it back in. What do you got? And I told him what lights came on, and the guy said, yeah, it's what it looks like from here, too. He said, I have fiber optic cable to this room. He said, yeah, it looks like the fiber's broke. And I said, well, how would that happen? And he said, well, maybe you stepped on it or moved a piece of furniture on it. And I said, well, I hadn't moved anything in that. But I said, but I get it. So he said, well, let me see how long, what I can do about getting somebody out there to fix it. So I'm sitting here thinking, and I'm reliving my morning, and I'm also tracing that line back from here all the way back around the house to the pole. Because when they put that cable in, if you guys remember, they buried a line from the light pole or telephone pole, whatever you want to call it, all the way around the house to this building.
The light pole.
And, well, telephone pole, what do you call them? That's what we call them.
Heck, I don't know what you call them anymore.
When they were all telephone poles to us, we didn't.
Yeah.
Even if they didn't have a telephone line on them. So anyway, I got to thinking, and then it hit me. We're in the process of selling our wood stove outside, and a guy came to look at it, and he actually is the guy that put it in this house, and he's wanting to remove the underground part, which is just a big hose, basically. And he had started working on that yesterday morning about 6:30 before I got up. And I just looked out the window and I saw it. I said, oh, he's already been here this morning. Well, after I started tracing the line in my mind back through there, I hit that ditch in my head and I said, oh, no, he's cut my cable. And that's what had happened. He cut my cable in two, and I no longer had service. And all the little light particles were jumping out there into space, going off to who knows where. And they came up here and
Kyrgyzstan's been watching the show. Kyrgyzstan's been watching the show.
Yeah. Oh man! So now I got to get that all redone. They ran me a temporary from the pole up to here yesterday. Just laid it on the ground and I have to give this guy thumbs up. And I got to call. I'm going to call Monday and tell his boss, if I can find his boss, what happened. he came out here. The guy came. He came. I got a call 20 minutes. The first off, they told me, well, it might be tonight. But they should be able to get out there like between 5 and 7 last night. To which I thought, oh God, I hate for somebody to have to work, after supper or work late. But I'll be here. I said, I'll be here. So I figured all day long I'd be sitting here fretting about whether they'd make it. Well, 10 minutes later, I get a phone call, and it's the repair guy. And he says, well, I just happen to be right down the road from him. He said, but I'm not sure where your house is. And I said, well, where are you now? And he said, I'm at this. I can see a number here, and it's such and such. And I said, well, you're just right down the road.
So you vectored him in.
I vectored him. I said, come on around the corner curve there and come straight ahead, and you can't miss me. You'll run right into us. So they showed up, and they came out here, and they started looking at what I had, and they asked me questions about it. And I said, well, here's what I know what it is now. I don't know what to do about it, but I know what happened. I said, there's a guy been out here working, and I know he's cut the cable in two. Sure enough, they went over and found it.
He didn't call before he dug.
No. Don't remind me.
That's like a big deal. You got to call.
Oh, I know it is. I know it is.
Or you might die of a fiery crash or something.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure when I talked to him about the stove, the heater, I mentioned that in the cable, and I said, well, I need to find out. But I just had it looked at. Okay, so I kind of knew. I mean, I had it looked at just before we put the cable in, so I wasn't that worried about it because I knew there wasn't supposed to be anything out there except for the line he wanted to pick up.
Right.
And wasn't thinking about my cable line being out there. That hadn't hit me yet. So he showed me. I didn't tell you because I didn't talk to you, but yesterday afternoon, I don't know, late in the afternoon, he knocks on my door. I didn't finish my other story. So those two guys worked, and I said, so I'm out of luck till when? Till they can come in and lay a new cable? And they said, oh, no. Yeah, I said, I'm going to have you hooked up before I leave here today, and you'll have a cable, but then we'll have to come back out and do it, permanently. So he did. So I'm really grateful that they laid one just on the ground and brought it up here and hooked me up, and they had me running in 15 minutes. I mean,
so you'd call him a top hand.
I would call him a top hand. Yes, I would. Absolutely. I don't know if he treats everybody that way, but by God, he treated me that way. He did good. He did good work. So that was the story of yesterday.
Now you said Watch's bucket showed up.
Yeah, he showed up yesterday afternoon late, and he's looking in my window. Apparently, you can't see in as well as I thought you could because of the glare. And he knocks on the door. I told him, come on in. And he comes in and sits down here. And he says, I think I cut something. And I said, I know damn well you cut something. Let me tell you what it was. So we discussed it. So he did come and fess up.
Well, good for him. You got to appreciate good country folk.
Yeah. So so I'm going to have that done. Hopefully it won't. The guy told me, he said, it might take a couple of weeks to get it redone. He said, but you should be okay till then. So I got to protect that line. If a yard mower comes around, I got to make sure we get it picked up. If this guy comes back to work, I got to make sure he ain't cutting my line. They tried to splice it, but there wasn't enough. The guy said,
you didn't have enough slack.
It's underground. I can't pull slack out of it and hook it back up. But he said it just don't work that way.
Well, remember how we used to wire things? You put 3 or 4 loops where you had extra.
Yeah.
Because you knew at some point something was going to break and you're going to need that extra line.
Absolutely.
You always put extra line in.
Okay. As everybody's really quiet, do they just listen to this story of horror and excitement, or have they give up on it?
Well, there's a fair number of folks on, I think. But yeah, nobody's saying nothing.
I guess I've got them dumbfounded with all this excitement.
Maybe they've quit us.
Oh, surely. We're still online. Oh, they're just ripping me. That's Kelly, not our Kelly, but a different Kelly. She says they're just riveted. Well, unrivet, because that's pretty much the end of that story. I'll tell you, I was sitting here biting bullets though. Or nails. I didn't know what to think. And then once I found out, I thought there's no way that we'll get this hooked up. And I did find out though that my phone hotspot, which I have unlimited service on, thank goodness, actually did get my computer up and online for a little while yesterday. So I don't know if I could broadcast the show that way or not, but maybe. Who knows? I hadn't done it from the house.
It's like living in the future.
I mean, think about it. It is. It's like living in the future. That's what the future is going to be like, folks. Carol's also
they're gonna be tracking your every move. They're gonna be like knowing what you're thinking.
I switched my camera so I could point at things and be correct. In fact, I'd like look back here. I don't know if Tina's watching or not. Chuck's still in here. Look.
See, that ain't even my right hand. That's my right hand.
Look back here at the back. What I have. There's some changes.
That's the one that used to do stuff. Huh?
There's some changes back here. I've got.
I see. Things are happening.
I got a bulletin board. I went back there just this morning and put some things on it so it would look like I was using it. And that right in the middle is a copy of the Declaration of Independence. So by God,
I'm seeing some stuff happening there.
Yeah, I mean, I've got books in the book cabinet now.
I see that.
I still gotta go get some new glass, but I got books in it. Carol, Brenda wants Brenda to come down and clean her kitchen while she's at it. I bet she don't do that, even though she'd be more than welcome to come visit anytime. I wouldn't make her clean.
But I wouldn't you wouldn't want her to come clean your house for you.
Mm-mm. No, there'd be no house cleaning.
That's just silly.
But I'd love it, Carol. You pack up and bring the family down. We'll sit on the front porch and rock and drink a cold beer.
And spit some chaw.
Yeah, we'll spit some chaw. That's a good idea.
Aim at bees and whatnot.
Yeah, we can sit. Yeah, we can sit on the porch and shoot bees down on the pole down there. But you got to hit them while they're moving. If they're after they lie, that's again you can't.
You lose a point.
You lose, and lose a turn too. Oh my goodness!
You're only supposed to shoot flies, and if you hit a bee, you lose your turn.
Yeah, that's right. You're not supposed to shoot bees. That's true. Oh me!
Even them little black and yellow sons of bucks that are warriors, even them.
Yeah, that's not. They're like the Blackfeet of the whole nation.
The whole bee world.
Yeah. My God, they're not afraid of nothing either.
I got one in my pickup truck yesterday, and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna die!" Before I could get him out, I was driving, and he was sucked into the window, and I'm like, "That's a yellow jacket."
Oh no! Abandoned ship.
I just kept talking to him in a calm voice, and we pulled over, and I got him out of the truck.
Oh well, good for you.
I'm like, you are not going to land like down the back of my neck and go to work.
Sorry, guys, I got to reposition the camera a little bit after moving it there. Yeah, they can be in your truck can ruin your whole day. I'm tell you.
So, my former game warden here from Kimmer, he had one flying into I think he was still in college. He was driving a car. He had one fly in the window, a yellow jacket, and it went right down somehow it got down in his crotch.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
and he went to punching himself and trying to, and he literally wrecked his car over that yellow jacket, one little yellow jacket.
Oh my gosh, there's been a lot of
It
wrecks.
wasn't a terrible wreck, but it was enough of a wreck that he had to come get somebody to tow him. So
I have worried about that with Jennifer particularly. I mean, I try to get them out, and I have been in vehicles with people that went into instant momentary panic, just boom,
stationary back.
and you know that's a oh hell, what's his name? I can't
Pat
think.
McManus.
Pat McManus. Yeah, I gotta read that. And I need to find that book and read that chapter in that story.
Stationary
Anyway,
panic.
Jennifer freaks out when she gets any flying insect in her car, and I've always worried about reading about her having a wreck. But I mean, I'm a little bit like you. I kind of shoo them out of the truck or roll the window down, but I don't like them being in there. Don't get me wrong. I'm not happy about it. I just don't get quite as wound up. But whew, some people really get. I've worked. I had a gal that used to ride around and work with me a lot up around the lake, and if a bee or something got in the car, she was oh, I'd have to pull over or something to get that out because she was going to come unglued. I was always afraid. I don't know if she was allergic or not. If you're allergic to bees, I kind of get it. You don't want to get stung, but that's the best way to get stung usually is act that way.
Well, we had the big crawfish boil last weekend, whenever it was. And, the yellow jackets came in because there was meat to be had.
Oh, yes.
And they call them meat bees. And they, there was something dead that you could eat that they like to eat. And they just,
I need to clear something.
And people just like freak out. And it's like, just calm down. Just
hold that thought because I got a story. I'm going to ask Mike here a question, though. Mike has offered Diane that for free labor. And I'm betting that Diane is not home and does not know he's offering her services up for free labor. That's what I'm betting. I just don't think that would happen.
I haven't seen her on.
Now, Carol has said if Diana comes, she's coming, and then she wants to know if Tina and Kelly will come in too. So you're all welcome.
And then you guys all go off, and Tim will be left there to clean the house.
I'll be there to clean the kitchen. Yeah. Oh, no. He said, "Come on, Tim. Well, did I do such a thing?" Well, I have a feeling you might, Mike. I have a suspicion. So anyway, back to that last story.
And while she's occupied, he'll go buy a horse trailer.
Oh, now that is a good idea.
With living quarters.
Get her down here, and we'll keep her distracted for a few days. That is a good idea. Maybe you were thinking right there. That could be less. They could consider that a conspiracy.
You can get them to have like doors that swing open this way for horses, or you can get them with a tailgate.
Yeah,
or you could pull a Harley up in there too.
That's true. You can. In fact, I think I've seen that done.
You could put the big dog up in there.
Oh, him and the big. You don't know about this either. I should get him on here to tell this, although he might not tell it.
I don't want to hear it if it's bad news.
No, it's not. Well, it depends on your position, I guess. His wife sent me a videotape, which I ought to put on here today and show it to everybody. But Mike left the house the other day, apparently, and left Walter there by himself with her, just with Diana. And Walter was absolutely throwing a fit. He was going from window to window and door to door looking for Mike.
Mike wasn't home.
So Mike Mike tried to let on like this is Diana's problem. But it's not. I've seen evidence. It is Mike and that dog have got a very close relationship. Maybe unhealthy at some points. I like the way the stream is going this morning. Well, it's going right over to you now, You're the center of attention at the moment, big boy.
I just found a deal yesterday on the interweb of some forum, My Face or something, that had they found a burial in Sweden that was 8,500 years old. I think. I
Yeah,
think I
he
sent it. I think I sent it to you,
did. That was
it
great.
was a dog buried in a grave with grave goods, with toys and whatnot.
Just
And they found other ones in that same area where they had like necklaces on. Um, we've been close to dogs for a long time. It was the cool thing to me was it was older than the pyramids, older than any of that stuff.
yeah, they listed that stuff. I mean, I might be able to put a link to that. Let me see if I can while we're talking. Um, do you remember? I'm sure you've done this, and I did it, and I've had people look at me like I had three heads when I said this, but it's true. When we were younger, we used to sit out behind and as an example, we used to sit out behind the welding shop, which back in the days of my high school was the smoking area. And we'd sit out there and kill yellow jackets. We'd just wait for them to come up and we'd slap them just like that and kill yellow jackets. And if you do it right, you don't get stung.
Never.
We did that all the time. I think one day I had 11 in one class period was my record, I think. But I've told other people that, and they just look at me like, what is the matter with you? Why would you ever do such a thing?
I don't know.
You've never done that?
I always have a problem with showing
There.
stuff like this.
Well, you had it there. Now it scrolled on you.
Now it did something weird.
Yeah, it moved. That's the dog.
All I got to do is think about this thing aggravating me, and then I lose my cool.
Hang on, watch it not let me log in.
So there's the dog skeleton buried in a grave with toys.
And in this particular case, apparently it wasn't like buried with like the master or who had it.
No, it was just a grave for the dog, and it was buried. It had toys and it had stuff with it.
I thought that was pretty amazing.
And it said it was buried before Stonehenge, before the Roman Empire, before Easter Island, before the pyramids.
Yeah, but look real close on that one toy there. I believe it says Chewy.
Yeah, whatever.
They ordered it mail order.
I have woke my wife up and my daughter.
Uh-oh. Good morning, wife and daughter.
Morning.
They're all awake.
Sorry about that.
Things are happening.
My fault.
Things are happening.
Yeah, they don't. I don't think it mentioned what kind of dog they thought it was, Mike. But it was the early demand. Well, it was in Scandinavia, so they were talking about there were, whatever dogs were up there. It could have been. Well, it was a Viking dog. I don't know if they had. They said it looked kind of like a muscular greyhound to someone. I didn't see that, but maybe they did. And but it was pretty cool. I mean, that was an interesting story.
I thought it was cool. I mean, we've been with them they've been with us, we've been with them for a long, long time.
Yes, we have. I tell you what, I'm about tired of this. I can't find that message. Oh, there it is, right there.
But
okay.
It had a very distinct forehead, like
Yeah.
a domestic dog. Certainly was not a wolf, or wolf-like creature.
Here's the link if anybody else wants to go read about it. I think see if this works. Yeah, there it is. Anybody else see that? Is that
I see
show up?
it on the chat.
Okay. That'll take you to the dog story, which is, if you're interested in that sort of thing, which I suspect you are because you have joined us this morning
You're on this darn
to
show.
talk to us, and so there you go. This is the very kind of thing you're going to get from time to time.
It sounds to me like you've left your turn signal on. I know it's your clock.
Oh yeah. You hear that?
But it sounds like you've permanently left on your turn signal.
Sorry about that. Hey, you'll be proud to know though that I've got the two clocks synced pretty close now. So when they go gone, 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 they do it at the same time or
That's
within a
good.
minute.
That's good.
So that won't be quite as perhaps one could say irritating. I'm gonna go ahead and get things put up here for the show starting to get this right. Oh, I didn't do it. I already screwed it up. Hang on. No. Why did it do that? All right, hang on just a minute. I hadn't had this problem in a while. I know it's hard as that may be for some to believe. And now I'm sitting here. I don't even want to say what I'm doing right now. Why is that doing that? Well, maybe I can make it work, but this is not how I usually work. It's not how it's supposed to work. Okay, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what it's doing. Let me move this over to here, and maybe I can do it without having this in front of me. Well, that's not working either. No doubt this has something to do with the things that happened yesterday. If it didn't, I'm going to blame it on it anyway. Give me just a minute. I have to check my monitors here. Something is amiss. And
Well, while you're doing that,
yeah.
Today's episode is brought to you by Sanka Coffee.
Unofficially, anyway.
I just watched an old Andy Griffith, and they did all the commercials themselves.
Yeah.
The guys like Andy and Barney did the commercials.
Did they?
Sanka Coffee, yep. Actually, it's brought to you by Blue Emu Lidocaine.
And what have I got sitting here that I've been using?
And Relief.
And whatever this kind of roll-on painkiller is supposed to be, pain reliever is supposed to be, cryotherapy with a big V. I don't see the name.
And when I put this stuff on, I got to follow it up with a little bit of the red, green, and white can and use a little
bag bomb.
Little bag bomb.
I have to think. Let me try to think for a minute. Because for some reason I am forgetting. It's like I've grown. I've slept apparently, and I have forgotten everything. Oh.
Why'd you forget?
Well, apparently I've done something yesterday. I don't know why the internet would mess this up, so I must have done it myself. I can't get my computer. I use two monitors, and right now my monitors will not sync. All I can get on this one, I can't get this one I can't get my left monitor to show that's where I usually put the screen for you guys to see. And for some reason, it is not allowing me to do that. So when I do it, I'm not. Well, let me go ahead and try it. Let me see if I can make it work this way. Maybe I can work backwards today, which I know may not make any. See, already I can't do it because I can't pick the presentation.
Oh yeah, you're gonna have to move that clock, dude.
Is that really that loud today?
Yeah, it sounds like your turn signal's on. Literally.
I adjusted my microphone. I bet I've got it in a bad place. Guys, bear with me.
I follow trucks down the road, and they'll be doing that.
Okay.
Where they left their turn signal on for 25 miles. You know, it drives me crazy.
Okay, I can't see that screen that you're seeing now should go away just in a minute. And hopefully you will get the correct screen. So bear with it. There's a delay. So once the delay works its way through the system, coming around on the guitar, it's getting close, I think.
What I'm seeing is a whole stacked layers of
it's not
the same thing.
Yeah, it didn't show up. Oh, I might have to mute my microphone because I'm about to say things that I shouldn't. Well, I don't care if I do personally, but other people might take offense. So let me put it that way. I don't know why is this doing this? All right, you still don't see the slide, correct?
I do not.
No, I can tell now by looking, and I can't.
What I see is now I just see us.
All right, let me see about doing it a different way here. Carol, I probably should ask you for help. You probably could have walked me through it. Okay, can that?
There it is.
Yeah, it's just not big as it normally is. I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be bigger so you could see it better. But I guess
what we're seeing is the first slide.
Yeah, but you're also seeing
and then that bar over on the whatever you would call that shows all the slides on the.
Uh-oh.
Boudreaux's protecting and serving.
There's a little bit bigger. I'll have to figure that out later. All right. So we're going to talk about saddles. This is a show that we started to do a couple of weeks ago, and Mark was going to be busy. So I put it aside, last week, and I put it aside, and I did the one about special days of the month and the year and all that. But we're going to do this, and if you saw my thumbnail on YouTube, then you saw this saddle. This saddle was built by a gentleman at Hams Fork Saddlery out in Wyoming sometime in this century. And it's a copy of a Charlie Russell, a saddle that who made for Charlie Russell?
So that's not it, dude.
Oh, that's not the one? Okay. Which one is it?
That's the saddle I built for my son.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, is this one completely custom or is it modeled after something else?
Well, it's a Wade kind of a saddle, a cowboy saddle, slit forks and a big old horn. And the first time he took it out and used it, his knucklehead of a horse like fell down into a big old deep irrigation ditch and
Oh no.
completely submerged that saddle. And Sam was screaming at him, "You're ruining my new saddle."
Get my saddle out of that creek.
Get that out of
That ditch.
that.
Oh my goodness. I'd like to, well, sort of.
It was funny.
So
He
anyway.
didn't hurt anything, but it needed to drink of oil after that.
Yeah, I bet it did. So I had that wrong, but anyway, it's still built by the same guy at Hams Fork, or as I called it yesterday, bacon. What did I call it?
Bacon crick or something.
Yeah, bacon crick or something. Okay, so as I usually do, hit the like button if you enjoy this conversation, and subscribe if you haven't.
So you can't blow this thing up at all?
No, that's as big as I can get it. That's what. And that made it worse. That's as big as I can get it.
Did or not?
And I'm sorry. I don't know why it's doing this. I mean, I haven't done anything that should have caused this. And I actually messed with it. I messed with it yesterday.
I'm sure it was because of the line cutting incident.
Well, yeah, I'm sure it did too.
Can you view the slideshow and not have
all this on there? Well, I'm trying to remember how to turn that off.
So I'm trying to look at your buttons. Hit the slideshow tab at the top.
Yeah, that's what I'm on.
Hit from beginning or something.
Yeah, that's what I've got on, and when I do, it pops up on that screen.
Huh, that's weird.
And apparently nobody can see it on that screen.
All right.
Wait a minute. Hang on, man. I might be on to something here. Give me just a moment. I don't want to see that. I'm either about to make it better, or I'm about to make it all worse. I went back to what I had.
Okay, hit that. There's a view tab right past the slide right there.
Yeah, I was looking at that a minute ago.
Hit the slideshow when it's right. No, you were right on it, and then you got no. Go to view. Now view slideshow.
Where do you see that at?
Whoa, right there. What does that say?
No, that says slide master.
Oh, I can't.
I think if I do that, I
Can't
think
read it. It's too tiny.
yeah, it goes to something entirely different.
Yeah, sorry.
You can see it, so don't want to save that. Hang on, I'm going to redo here. Oops. Well, you know what? Maybe, just maybe, let me try. This might actually help. Let's start the show over, or the slideshow. I've had it open all day. Maybe if I close it for a moment, it will work better. Let me turn that screen off so everybody don't have to look at that. Oh, I froze my own screen.
Well, you're moving.
Now I'm back to where that part. Let me try this one more time. And if this don't work, we may just have to live with it. And it didn't work.
And do.
Oh, wait a minute. No, that's not it either. What in the hell? Well, I won't get any rave reviews over this show. Not that I do anyway, but okay. Guys, I just don't know what to do. Short of just doing it like I was and calling it
Good.
well, I hate to call it good, but now there's something I'm not going to try that because I just don't trust it. I don't trust myself. Okay, well, I'm just going to have to live with it. And sorry, guys, but hopefully you can, just try to ignore the man behind the curtain here and I'll try to give commentary as needed. And I actually do have some things written down I'd like to use at some point. So we're going to talk about this, and I already asked you to, click the buttons. But after the last week, I decided to continue a little bit of this maybe once a month or so. And I wanted to note that today, this very day that we're living, is National Beach Day and National Toasted Marshmallow Day. I don't get much better than that. I mean, that's just, I've been wanting roasted marshmallows ever since I found out about that. And this month, being August, is very special around this house because it is Kelly and Brenda's and Jennifer's birthday, 8 days apart. Jennifer's was yesterday. So happy birthday to my oldest, or our oldest. Smokey the Bear. Smokey Bear was born this month. Sam Elliott was born this month.
Smokey Bear was not born this month.
Well, I know, but they must have brought him out to the public.
That's when they brought his burned carcass out.
Yeah, I knew that, but that's probably when they named him, and he became Smokey Bear. Before that, he was just a burnt bear. Orville Wright, Neil Armstrong, Louis Armstrong.
You skipped over Sam.
Oh, I said Sam Elliott. I thought I did. Maybe I didn't. I thought that's a good one since we're talking about saddles. Orville Wright and Neil Armstrong get my airplane Jones and the outer space stuff, and then Louis Armstrong was great sax player, or not sax, trumpet. Lucille Ball of all people. I mean, who knew that she might share? I didn't look to see what day she was. One of the girls may share a birthday, and Jerry Garcia from the
dead.
So there were a whole bunch more. It was amazing how many politicians were born in August, but I chose not to include them in this discussion. So there we go. So anyway, let's go here.
Larry L. Zorns, Esquire.
Oh yes, I forgot to put him on there. Damn it! Sorry.
He was born in this month.
Yeah, in fact, his birthday is Brenda, correct me here. Is it
22nd.
Is it the day before or the day after your birthday?
His is the 22nd.
Well, that'd be the same day because I know hers is the 22nd. So anyway, there is some evidence that suggests that the sort of what we would call the birth of the modern saddle was used by Assyrians back in about 700, 800 BCE or BC. And some people might just prefer, but more or less BCE. Before, how does that go? Before current era, I believe.
Yeah.
And basically they think it consisted of just a cloth strapped around the horse with I learned this word yesterday, syringal.
Syringal.
Well, Al, how'd you say it?
The sound.
Well, I think I looked it up and they pronounced it for me. That's close enough. Anyway, it's a girth strap's what it amounts to, but it goes all the way around. And they didn't really have a tree, and they didn't, even though this one picture shows a guy with his foot in what looks like a stirrup. They didn't have stirrups back then. Stirrups came along later, and probably I think
surcingle actually is what the name.
Surcingle, that's it. The invention of the stirrup did come out of Asia, though, I believe. I think I've got that down here. So anyway, that's an early drawing of what somebody thought that the Assyrians looked like going to war. And these are some old saddles, and if you get right down to it, even something strapped to an elephant could be called a saddle. But we're not gonna show any elephant saddles this trip. But and these, of course, this is Indian elephants, and again, saddles came from that part of the world. Some of them. This is a very old one here, and I don't have my notes on that because I can't see them. Let's see if I wrote that down. Yeah, I'm not sure. Okay, but that's one of the oldest saddles that they still have that's in pieces. And this saddle, if you can tell, the one kind of in the middle, that is called an 8-horn Roman saddle, and I'm thinking that it could probably be used for several things, sitting upon and or strapping a bunch of stuff too would be my guess, because that's kind of what they used them for anyway. I mean, we even more modern saddles sometimes were used to pack, and some of the McClellans were designed or built in a way that they could be used for that easily by just hooking stuff to them. We'll get to that in a minute. This big saddle on the right is Ottoman. This is an early Nubian saddle out of Africa. And this is another Central Asian by decoration. I would think this probably came from South Central Asia, India, maybe Cambodia, Vietnam, that part of the world, be my guess. And but this saddle over here is much more ornate, and they think this was an Ottoman saddle, probably captured. I believe this one said they were probably captured during the Crusades and brought back to Middle Europe or Western Europe to show off as a trophy of war, because saddles can be that too. A couple more. This is a Japanese samurai saddle. I thought that was kind of cool. And there's something to notice here, that as saddles became, particularly when they became for war, and warriors changed what they wore, what they fought with. I mean, the early Syrians were just, they were out there fighting with their spears and knives and whatnot, and no body armor, none of that kind of stuff. So they didn't need as much structure, although it developed as they needed it. But you can see this saddle's got a lot of wood in it. I can't tell if it's split in the middle, kind of like a McClellan mark. I don't know if you've ever seen one of these or not.
It looks like it, and
it does.
And you mentioned earlier, I'm not sure what the knowledge base of the audience is on parts of the saddle, but you mentioned a tree earlier. This thing didn't have a tree. Well, the tree is the wood part that's wrapped in rawhide that basically makes, is all the structural soundness of a saddle. Nowadays they use they're like plastic trees.
Yeah, I think I've got a picture of one in here that made out of polystyrene or something.
Which are still they'll never replace a wooden rawhide tree.
Right.
They
Yeah,
just, I mean, wood and rawhide and leather fits a horse, and plastic don't.
well, plastic doesn't tend to be as forgiving, and it won't conform.
Yeah, it's not. It's got no soul.
Yeah, that, and it's already made to a shape. It's molded to a shape. It's not going to conform to
And
a
it's
horse's
never
back.
going to flex, and it's never going to be.
So, and this one down, this bottom saddle is, as I mentioned, Cambodia. I think a minute ago. This is out of Cambodia. They think. Again, notice that it's open in the middle. I think that's kind of an important trend there that was already happening. And then the next slide. These are more of mid. Keep thinking I see somebody at my door. Oh, the Middle Ages or knights. As armor became a thing and weapons got bigger and heavier, the knights got heavier, their armor got heavier. They started building saddles that had more structure to them and would hold them in place. And these are, I don't know, obviously that one on the right is new made, but it's supposed to be a replica of that. And the top one is probably a very similar saddle, but it's got a cover on it, an extra thicker pad. This bottom one just has a leather cover. So anyway, and I'll go from there to this next one. I thought this next one was interesting. Well, I think they're all interesting. But this one, I don't know where this was uncovered, but this is all carved in wood. I don't remember if it said what kind of wood. Well, they're saying it's a staghorn saddle, and it's got some birch bark covering in places, but it is decorated with scenes and dragons and demons and conquest thereof, and it was not worn. It was used for a parade saddle, they think, and
you can see the
battle.
slots.
You can see, yes, you can see the girth slots right here.
Well, there's a girth slot and a stirrup leather slot. That upper one is a stirrup leather.
Oh, is it that wider one?
Yeah, and then they were using a center fire kind of rigging to where the cinch was at, the part that goes under the belly of the horse that holds the saddle on. That's kind of that rear slot. Most of those earlier saddles were center fire, including McClellan's for that matter.
So what that means then, let me clarify that for everybody. When you say center fire, you mean the cinch strap is more centered on the side?
In the center of the belly of the horse.
Okay, rather than
versus up front.
Yeah.
Most modern saddles, or even saddles from the late 1800s, most of them, the cinches are the forward cinch, the front cinch. The important cinch is forward of the center of the belly of the horse. It's up kind of in the armpit, if you will. And then a lot of people have a rear cinch that you don't tighten. It's just there to, if you rope a bull and he pulls on your saddle hard enough, you might want something that keep your saddle in place, or if you're going downhill or whatever.
When I was a lot younger and rode a lot, and nobody ever really could tell me what that back cinch was for. You just left it loose or didn't use it at all. A lot of our saddles that I remember having were smaller pony saddles, but they were all Western type. I'm not sure any of those actually even had a rear cinch. They probably had the slots for it, but they weren't on it because they just didn't use them. And a few of them had them, and a few of the saddles had more stuff. They like martingales and that sort of thing, and other parts of harness. But anyway, so this was something that was ridden triumphantly after battle, and after someone had gone out and slayed their demons and dragons. And this next slide, and you won't, this one, I can't read this one. This is an Italian drawing that basically is one of the first things they saw where they showed somebody or that was left over that was drawn that shows someone parading through town on a decorated saddle and all that stuff. And you can't see much of it, but that's what it's described as. And I don't know if this is Latin or Willy Wally Bang Bang. I don't know what the language is. I can't read it. Okay, now we're going to move up to more.
Bang bang.
I don't know what it is. We're going to move up to
Some witch doctor's talking to you.
to kind of where this was mostly going, and that's talking more about U.S. saddles and how that progressed. So bear with me on some of these, and we'll go. But these are early. Now this is not an old saddle, but this is basically an English saddle, or what I grew up calling an English saddle. And this gentleman is riding something very similar to that English saddle. And this is pretty much what we had in the United States, the colonies, because, the British influence, and that's where we came from, or that's how a lot of people got here. So they were riding the same kind of saddles, and they had hunting versions of this. Now, what I found fascinating about this is what I learned I learned a lot from this, actually, even though it may not sound like it. How saddles that actually are used back here today and have been for the last 200 years are not what I thought they were. They're different saddles. I mean, they're not that design. I grew up thinking everything looked like a Western saddle. Well, it was either an English saddle or a Western saddle. And the only thing we used Western or English saddles for was the show horses that they had, my cousins and uncles had, or something similar to that. But they weren't Western. And to us as kids, either it was English or it was a Western, one or the other. And I didn't realize what some of these designs have evolved into over the years. So, and you probably have seen them. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. And I want to go through the slides because I did get a late start today. But anyway, that's kind of what we started out with. This is a fairly decent example. If you wanted to see how it worked and you can't get out to Mark's house and see how people make saddles, this is what a typical workshop might have looked like. And these guys are all at the saddlery shop in Colonial Williamsburg. So as far as I know, you could go up there today and pay your money and see the show. And one of the shops there are these guys working on saddles and building harness and things like that for, I'm sure, to sell for funding and probably for other people as custom things that, again, for money. But I assume they take custom orders. Now, the saddle on the far right is a side saddle. What?
Oh, I just muted myself because my wife was making a comment. She said, "Well, yeah, their saddle shop's not in the living room."
Yeah, but think of how much more trouble it is.
Which was a good one. Which was a good one.
It is a good one. That's good, Shauna. Thank you.
It's warm in the living room, and there's a big TV.
And it's closer and you don't have to go as far.
I don't have to go as far.
Think about it. You don't get stuck in traffic. You don't get stuck in the mud. You just got to walk over there. Anyway, this is a side saddle that they built for somebody, or maybe just for show. That's actually on sale there. And Jim, that's the guy's name that was working on this or built this saddle. Supposed to be Jim Clater, who doesn't mean anything to me but he may be known up there if people know about their saddles, or people in that area may have work done. I don't know how they work all that stuff. They may do work for people on saddles, so they have that to go by and things to work on. But anyway, that's Williamsburg, and they're doing saddles the old-fashioned way, so to speak. And Mark does most of the stuff he does like this too, or similar.
Just like it.
I mean, you have a stitching machine, but you really do it by hand mostly.
There's so much of it that, I mean, stitching on a saddle, most of the stitching on a saddle is decorative. And
yeah.
And it's the parts that you need to stitch for structure, all that still has to be done by hand.
I know you can't see it well, and I don't think I can make it any bigger.
Don't be messing with it.
I'm not gonna mess with it. The guy in the middle, I believe, is doing some grooving cutting. And what does that mean? Can you explain that? I mean, why you groove leather, or what he?
Well, I mean, you would put a groove in leather to set the stitching down in below the surface of the leather,
so it doesn't get worn off as quick.
So it doesn't get worn off.
Yeah,
it's just a function that protects the stitching.
And I don't have
most of this hand stitching, it's you got one thread, great big long thread, and you've got two blunt needles, and you poke holes. Hopefully,
I have a picture of that actually.
At an equal interval, and you like use an awl, a pointy sharp tool that I have many scars in my hands from. And you poke that through the leather, and sometimes it's like 8 layers of leather,
thick leather,
which is pretty tough to get through, and maybe rawhide too, and you want those stitches to last as absolutely as long as they possibly can. Because it's a pain in the backside to stitch a saddle.
Well, and you can contest to this. I mean, you've had saddles, you've worked on saddles that were fairly old that you're having to replace some of that on.
Yeah, I just rebuilt one. It took me forever to get it done, but it because it was kind of like I don't know if you guys ever saw that old movie, The Money Pit. Every time I went a little deeper in that saddle, I'm like, oh, great, now I got to replace that. And that needs replaced too. And I finally got her down to about the tree and had to redo stuff. And it's just, I mean, that's just the reality. It was an old saddle made in California that had been well used. Whoever used it was a cowhand, because it had been ridden a lot
and worked. It sounds like.
Yeah, and it was that beautiful old leather that had lots of blue jean hide on it.
Well, you talked about punching holes, and I've got something about that too. This guy in the first picture on the left is got a wooden mallet, but he's using a pricking tool, or basically a multiple hole punch. That's how I describe it. So you can put that that helps you keep your stitches spaced, but you can make a line, in the leather or in the groove of the leather, and go along there and put stitches, and then come back with your hands or your needle and your thread. And on
kind of looks like a devil's pitchfork, but it's straight tined, so it doesn't have curved tines like a pitchfork, like a hay fork would have. It's got straight up and down.
Kind of like an old garden rake in a way, just straight tines.
And you're just tapping on that, and it drives those holes in it. It's usually 4, and then you move it to the last hole you poked, set it back in there and hit it again, and then keep doing that until you get all your holes punched. But there are places on a saddle you can't do that, like the cantle, which is a big old long set of stitches that's kind of a pain in the backside. It's a big curved surface. The cantle is the rear of the saddle, the seat, the back of the seat.
Yeah, I got it.
And there's a binding on that, and you got to sew that on there by hand, and that's the hardest part to sew, as far as I'm concerned, on a saddle. Well, the horn is kind of tricksy too. So,
Well, I would think, yeah, and
putting
this
the
guy
horn
on the guy on the far right is doing something I don't claim to understand much even now, but Mark explained to me. And that guy's supposed to be, in this case, he's working on, I think, a buggy whip, but it's still leather sewn up. He's burnishing with some kind of a bone or,
bone, antler, screwdriver, blade, whatever, something that's hard and smooth.
yeah, I guess that's what he's doing is kind of smoothing the outer surface of the leather or
Yeah, so you might put a little finish on it, little oil, not oil like engine oil, but oil like neat's foot oil,
right.
which is an emulsified oil, kind of like brains that you brain can hides. It's the same stuff. And you or egg yolks, you could use that too. But then you're just like you're heating that piece up and smoothing it at the same time.
What's that stuff that you use? In fact, I bought some that you use that you can only get like in one place in the world out there.
Quick Slick.
Quick Slick, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a pretty. I like that stuff.
And that's what that's for primarily, isn't it?
Yeah, it's for burnishing those edges and making them smooth and beautiful.
Well, I got it. Well, I don't want to skip over this, but I've got a slide coming just in a second that explains nomenclature. So I want you can.
That's good because we need to. Well, I've been throwing out terms that
maybe don't make any sense.
I'm not boring everybody.
This center picture I put in there because it's again made for a saddle. This was colonial era type stuff, and when they used to call horse pistols, and they literally meant horse pistols. Now pistols in that time period were not that common because they were really expensive to make. And they usually as much as or more than a rifle, and you couldn't do near as much with it. So most people had a rifle or a shotgun, a smoothbore type gun. But that is a set of holsters from colonial period. You didn't wear them around your belt or around your waist. They actually hooked over your horse's neck or the front of the saddle somehow were attached. And that's what they were. And that's why they were called horse pistols. And they were usually kind of long and, big anyway, but so I just threw those in there for gee whiz. So I have the next two slides. I should have backed up a little bit, but they go back to the side saddle because I want to talk about it and then probably not talk about it anymore. But here's a couple of examples, and this one on the left upper is probably early 1900s built. It's not real old, but it's not new. This lower left right-hand picture, I probably said up. The upper left, lower right, it's just like a Christmas card that shows a woman on her side saddle horse going to. Looks like she might be Red Riding Hood and going to Grandma's house, but instead of wolves, she's got some dogs with her. Anyway, she's side saddle, which is just a strange position and a way to ride a horse. I mean, it wasn't. They didn't think women should be riding a horse straddle, and so it wasn't feminine. Yeah, that's a whole other story. But side saddle, I thought it had to be the hardest way to ride a horse. And then I learned that, yes, it was, but some very famous women, I guess it depends on what part of the world you're in, rode side saddle. For example, Belle Starr, who was a notorious, basically a female outlaw of the day, madam of the house, and I won't tell you, you don't need details to know what kind of houses. I mean, Belle Starr was into all kinds of things. And this picture was taken with a deputy sheriff whose name I didn't write down in Fort Smith, Arkansas in 1886. And she's riding side saddle.
That's Rooster Cogburn, man.
That is a young Rooster Cogburn. I'm sorry.
That's where he worked out of.
I didn't realize that by the time people moved to the western United States and were wearing holstered pistols around their waist and whatnot, were still riding side saddle. I just thought I'd never seen that before. Never a picture of her riding side saddle, but I guess if anybody was going to be, it her. And that pistol she's carrying, I believe, is a big old Smith and Wesson Sheffield or Schofield.
So it's interesting. That's 1886.
Yes.
And women by that point were riding straddle.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I say it.
But I think it was still if you had a side saddle, that's what you rode.
Yeah, maybe if you grew up.
Saddles were and continue to be expensive. And
right, you didn't just get a new one just because.
Like, I'm gonna go to the Sears and Roebuck. I mean, eventually you could do that, but not then.
Right.
And everything was darn sure custom then. Even today, it's like, I mean, there are places that churn saddles out like crazy, but
sure,
you get what you pay for. So
and to go back to what I said a minute ago about side saddles being, I think I said something about, I don't say how they did things on them without.
That's amazing right there is what that is.
This is Esther. I put that backwards. They had it written backwards and I didn't fix it. Esther Stace was an Australian cowgirl, if you will. And this was around not in the 18. She worked 20 years, I think. They had competitions, somewhat like rodeos over there. I'm sure they were copied after rodeos here because that's where they got a lot of that. And she performed as a woman contestant, and they did jumping exhibitions. And this is her in a side saddle jumping a 6'6" barrier. A 6'6". That's tall. As I was telling Brenda, that's over the horse's head. I mean, probably. And that record stood, as if anybody would even want to try to break it, stood for 98 years. But it was broken, I think, I think it was 2012, sometime after the turn of the century. Anyway, a lady broke it. I don't know if she was an Australian, but
probably
she jumped something that was 6'8". And I believe that's the standing record because, again, I'm thinking, who the hell would want to try to break it? I mean, 6'8" again is getting pretty tall. But she did, and that. Let me back up and say the woman that broke it was also side saddle. I knew, side saddles. I mean, who would have thought that you'd want to jump stuff in a side saddle
or standing up? Standing up.
Yeah. Yeah, like the Romans?
In the manner of the ancient Romans.
Movie quotes.
And that was, those three boys actually did those jumps standing up. The actors did, not stuntmen.
You don't get every show out there on the internet doesn't give you movie trivia and saddle nomenclature all in the same show.
Exactly.
So here we go. And that's why I said this is, I had some nomenclature. So these are, if you don't know what a saddle is or what parts are a saddle, and I mean, I didn't either, all the parts. I just, we call things what we called them when I was growing up. I didn't really know what a cantle was. It was just the back of the saddle to me growing up. Now, horns, I knew what they were, and I knew that the English saddle on the right didn't have a horn, which I thought was dumb because I was a kid that thought cowboys were great, and so cowboy saddles were the thing. But you didn't, and like I said, you didn't see a lot of other saddles, which I wish I had because now that I know more about, especially Tennessee, Kentucky, this part of the world had saddles that were quite famous. But I didn't know it. I wish I had known it. But anyway, we'll get there in just a second. But you can see the front saddle, which is what Mark works on primarily, something similar. I mean, not exactly, but and you see where the stirrups and the stirrup leather. Did they have the fender marked right? They do. It is, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the fender.
Yeah, okay, that's what I always thought. And the skirt of the saddle is just the extra leather that's attached to the bottom of the tree.
Yep. So
padding on it or
it's
something,
attached
maybe.
to the bottom of the tree, and under the skirt is typically a sheepskin
Yeah.
split down the middle. I mean, it's two skirts under that tree of wood and rawhide.
Yes, that's a good point.
And it's sewn together. It's laced together in the back. And then you got lots of screws and nails and whatnot holding that all together.
A lot of which are hidden and you can't see, so that's hard to do.
Yeah, I mean you got to do all that stuff to keep the leather onto the wooden rawhide tree, and you got to be real careful and make sure you're not doing something where you run a screw out and maybe make a poking spot into a horse's back, because you're going to get bucked off if that's the case.
Think about the old saying, a burr under the saddle. Well, a screw sticking through is pretty much the same thing.
Permanent burr under a saddle.
Um,
I mean, you know, in the olden days, a lot of guys, I mean, they put sheep fleece under that skirt, and that was basically your saddle blanket.
yeah, right.
A lot of times, I mean, they didn't use pads and blankets and all that. They just stowed their bare old saddle up on the back of that horse and rode it, and that skirting, that fleece, acted as a pad. And that was really true of like cavalry people in the army.
Yeah. And just if you've never sat on a wool seat pad or a I don't know how else to say it, but actually it's a thing in motorcycling, for example, that people actually take sheepskins and make seat covers that you sit on, because believe it or not, a good wool seat cover can be warm, but it can also be cool. It's not as hot as sitting directly on leather, for example. And I've used
it gives you like a grip. It gives you some traction.
It does that too. But I mean, it's just comfortable. Wool is a neat. I don't even call it a fabric because
hair.
It's hair. Yeah, it's hair. It's cool hair. I mean, it's neat stuff. So and then if you look at the right, you see an English type saddle. You know, you see that there's a pommel, but no horn. On the Western saddle, it does have a pommel or a swell. I guess I always thought the swell was the side parts of a pommel, but that's where the horn is mounted.
It is. It's like I was talking about that saddle that I had built for Sammy. That was a slick fork saddle, so it has no swells at all. It's just a kind of an A fork.
Okay, I get it now.
This saddle that we're looking at has got swells that, if you look at the pommel, that part that the horn is attached to, those kind of swell out, and you can hook your legs up and under that.
Hang on.
And most people today that ride a slick fork saddle will attach a bucket. They call it a bucking roll, which I think that saddle was saying, well, no, it didn't have bucking rolls, I don't think. Anyway, it's like an artificial bucking roll or an artificial swell that's made out of leather and sheepskin. Just gives you something your legs you can grab onto. I don't think that saddle's got bucking rolls on it.
We can flip back real quick.
No, see, that's a slick fork saddle with a big old horn, big old Mexican style horn. They call that a wade.
Is that a maker's name originally?
Yeah, it was the original maker was a guy out of South Dakota way back when, like 18 something. And the guy that made that saddle famous, well, several people did, but that there was a family in Oregon that kind of made that saddle famous. It's a really good heavy duty working saddle that you can rope a lot of cattle off of. So tough.
And you see on these two saddles, in this particular case at least, there's two different kinds of stirrups. Probably a wooden stirrup over here on the left covered in leather, but it could be metal, I guess. And this is a bare steel saddle or stirrup. And they're used in a different fashion. It's pulled up. You don't normally ride with it up that high. Now, jockey saddles have real high stirrups. They're not this kind of stirrup. But these are pulled up out of the way while they're putting the saddle on a horse or something. Then they have to drop them back down to where they keep them for their leg length, because that's important too. But anyway, that's kind of the difference in the two saddles. And that, like I said, growing up, and for a lot of my life, this was kind of what I would have said. If you'd shown me something that even looked like the saddle on the right, I would have said, oh, that's an English saddle or an English style saddle. And now I have, like I said, I have learned that there are things that look similar to that, but are not English saddles at all. So anyway, anything else you want to mention on these?
Yeah, the Aussies ride saddles that look like that one on the right, that English saddle.
Yeah.
We rode saddles like that for much of our history till we moved west of Mississippi, and you needed it was all about what you were doing horseback. If you were a soldier in the army, you didn't need a big old horn and all that stuff to ride a horse, on your saddle. And horns were developed specifically for cattle work.
Roping cattle.
And that little old horn on that saddle there that you've got pictured,
that wouldn't hold nothing.
That sucker that'd come. You'd have to pad that heavily just to make that work for you. But
so here's an example of just that thing. Here, the horse on the right and that saddle is being worked. I put this in here just to show there's the rope attached to the horn, and it's going down to a steer on the ground, and it's probably been tied at a rodeo or something, or a calf of some sort, and that's why they're made that way. That's how they work that saddle, or one of the ways at least. And that's why the horn's there. It's a strong, big old strong horn made to take. They use them for two things. They wrap rope around them to hold cattle, and they use them to wrap rope around and cut your finger, thumb off. But that's two different stories.
And that horse is like leaning back. That horse is well trained. He's leaning back, and he's
holding tension.
He's holding that critter. He's not taking a step. He's backing up, and the rear cinch on that saddle is just to keep that saddle from tipping up.
Yeah, you can't. You can see it if you really look. The back of that saddle is tipped up some.
Yeah, but there's a rear cinch on it. I see it. It's not a center fire actually, but there's a rear cinch on that. And then, no, I was going to say something. I can't even remember now. Don't matter. We'll go on.
Is it about hunting or fishing?
Probably.
And then again, the English style saddle is still being used today for dressage, or if you watched the Olympics recently, you saw people riding in that type of saddle and jumping over things and all kinds of stuff like that, maybe chasing the fox. Howdy ho, there goes the SOB.
But the people that invented kind of roping livestock horseback were Mexicans.
Yeah, that's where that design
came from. Those vaqueros from Mexico, those buckaroos, that's where the word buckaroo came from, vaquero. They have big old horns on their saddles, and they're wooden. They don't even cover them with rawhide or anything.
I may have a picture of one like that here in a minute.
And when a critter hits the end of that rope, that sucker, it literally burns that horn. That rope.
Yeah, I've seen them smoke even at the national rodeos or things. I've seen them spin around that horn, and actually, you can see a little smoke come off of it sometimes.
And I know what I was going to say a minute ago was that when a guy's thumb comes off at a branding, it sounds like a rifle shot.
I bet it makes me
And
hurt.
then screaming happens after that.
And just to explain that, what happens sometimes, you're dallying or wrapping your rope, your lasso, lariat, whatever, around the horn to stop the steer, hold him, whatever, cattle of some sort.
If you get
your thumb in there, the rope jerks, and if you got your thumb in there,
it's gone.
It's gonna cut. It's gonna take it right. I won't say cut. It pops it off more than cuts. And it literally cauterizes that wound.
The guy I know that did it, that I was there present, he didn't bleed a drop.
Oh, wow. Well, I've seen it happen.
He wasn't happy. I can guarantee you.
I've never experienced it happening, but even in like national finals rodeo ropers, team ropers,
sometimes you'll see they don't have enough digits.
They don't have enough things. Yeah, there's something missing. There was a guy a couple of years ago that had been champion a couple of times, different rodeos. I can't remember his name, and he was trying to compete that particular event and he had no thumb. He had just popped his thumb off in an event, or maybe even during the NFR. I can't remember, but he was roping in it, and he was working it. But it throws your balance off when you're trying to rope a cow or something. It's you don't
have an opposable thumb anymore. So we were talking about Sam Elliott having a birthday this month. Earlier, and he was in one of my most favorite Western movies ever called Conager, which was based off of a Louis L'Amour book.
Yeah.
And Conager in the book was missing his thumb from dowling.
I didn't realize that. I've got that book too. I know I've read that. Anyway, so I'm here. Squirrel. So moving down one, and here's just
there's Miss Diana.
There's what?
There's Miss Diana's in the.
Well, hi Diana. Did you realize that your husband had been farming you out for free labor?
For free.
In foreign countries? I just wanted to bring that up in case you want to talk to him about that. I would mention it. So anyway, this is two Western saddles of, for whatever purposes. The one on the right, I included that primarily just because that is like an award saddle that somebody won. When
you win the rodeo, you get you a good old big old saddle with all fancy.
Big old saddles, yeah. And I wonder if anybody ever rides any of those saddles, but
I don't think so. Most of them I see are sitting on a saddle stand in the trophy room,
They're for looking through. They're not really
they're not for eating.
My husband made me make breakfast. Free labor doesn't surprise her. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Well, I'll tell you for a fact that I didn't get any free breakfast. I'll just point that out. I don't know if my wife's still in here or not.
Well, your wife was looking for you though when I was worried about you. So
she called me and said, when it ringed, I thought, oh no. And I looked up, and sure, the clock was at 10 after 10, and I was sitting there reading. And I said, I know. I hung up on her and just, kept going. But anyway, so I put that one in there because that is a decorated Western style saddle that was, awarded to some young person, actually. The AJRA is I believe it's the American Junior Rodeo Association, I believe is what the A stands for. And that's an award saddle. It was done by somebody. Texas Saddlery is the name of the group. I don't want to say factory. The builder that made that saddle. And Alvin G. Davis, who I know I have heard of, is the guy that started the AJRA for young kids to get involved in rodeo. And it's been going on for about 50 years now. But if you win a big competition like the National Finals Rodeo, you get a saddle made by somebody, and it's custom made, and it's like this. It'll usually have, I don't know if they probably put their names on them eventually, but they will say like NFR calf roping champion or something to that effect. They're on
What the year?
And the year, yeah. And this one has a date down here. This one's just an AJR. Well, that particular date at least is 1952 to 2002. So add another 20 years to that, and that's how long they've been in 72 years now. And that group has been around. And this one on top is just, I'm guessing that's a working saddle, but it's just different. I mean, look at the rings on that thing. Holy mackerel. I just noticed how big these side rings are, or cinch rings, whatever.
Yeah, they're all big like that on purpose.
Now, those just look extra shiny.
You're running that Latigo through that, but yeah, it's.
Anyway, so now I get to the thing that I've learned more about. Now, I'll say a little bit about this when I get here. These are what the English saddle kind of evolved into in parts of America early, before the Western saddle became popular or the craze or in movies. So that's what everybody thought saddles were, like me. And these are most people call them a plantation saddle. Some people call them a traveling saddle. And some of these saddles have some really unique features that make them comfortable to ride. Now, I did not know what this was, and a few months ago, I found a saddle on Facebook or somewhere for sale. It might have been one of the girls. It might have been in one of their auctions when they were working for JD. And it was made like this, and I had never seen anything like that, with all these welts and things in it, this kind of decorative look, like the one on the right. And Mark says, well, I believe you said, I believe that's a plantation saddle. And I started looking them up. Sure enough, that's what they were called generally. And they were used for just riding around. The old circuit preacher that would ride from village to village or town to town to preach the gospel probably rode in a very similar saddle to this.
Yep. Everybody that rode
basically was riding something much more like this than like the one we just showed you. They weren't riding these saddles back then, not in the East, and still to this day, they were riding something more like this. And I would love to ride one of these saddles. I got a couple more pictures, then I want to talk about how they're made, or one way they're made. I don't know if I brought a picture of that, but these saddles, at least this one, let's see, this one in the middle is called the Buena Vista saddle. These all may be built by the same guy, Hillcrest Saddlery, and I think that's in Kentucky, but not sure about that. But anyway, I didn't mean to pick them out because they were made by the same person. I just picked them out because they showed some different styles. And the way they make that welting, I saw a guy do that this morning on a video, which I'm going to list at the end. Amazed me, because you talk about time consuming. Oh my God. I mean, they did that by hand, and it was it's amazing. You should watch that video. Anyway, so these are Eastern or plantation saddles.
Well, that saddle on the left there, that upper picture on the left, that's gorgeous.
It is. And I don't know, tell me something. Is it just because they it seems like a lot of these saddles seem to lean back. Is that on purpose? Because
it's just kind of how you're
a natural repose. I mean, is that what that is?
If you're riding like a gaited horse, like a Tennessee walking horse, or or a standard bred, and you're just sitting there sipping your tea while you're riding. I mean, literally, like some of those horses are so smooth, like
Oh yeah,
it's just more comfortable. Whereas, like if you're in the West, if you're working cattle or something, you're not sitting down very often at all. You're standing up, you're posting in your stirrups. And it's just, I don't know.
I mean, I noticed
When you like sit down on your backside trying to work cows or something, the horse is not as comfortable and you're not either. So,
and yeah, leaning back like that would not be conducive to roping and doing stuff on them.
but if you were just like covering country, like my grandpa used to sell Fuller brushes, and he rode a gaited mule. And I don't know if he rode this kind of a saddle or what, but I mean, he rode all over Appalachia.
It's very possible.
Selling Fuller paintbrushes. That's what he did.
Go ahead.
Anyway, it was, you covered miles and miles every day, horseback or muleback. And if you were riding a gaited animal, that made life a little easier on you. And you could really cover some country. I wish I had his saddle. It was long gone before I was around.
I'd like to go back when I was 5, that time period, not be 5, be older, and look around in the barn at my granddad's and my uncles, because they had tack, and saddle. I mean, they probably had a saddle like this there that I just never knew what it was. It's quite possible, because all those folk are in that side of my family, and probably on the other side too. I just didn't realize it. We're still using horses for a lot of things. Now they had them. They showed them eventually in competitions, or my cousins did, but they were still plowing with mules or horses. They were still riding horses, and they very well could have been riding this kind of saddle. And I just didn't. I was a child. I didn't realize what I was missing out on.
Well, that Buena Vista in the middle. Look at the cantle on that. I mean, it's just a piece of artistry. It's just, and I appreciate it from that standpoint. If it fits a horse and won't sore a horse, look at those.
A couple more examples of the same stuff made by Hillcrest. This saddlery, like I said, they just had several versions of this type saddle, so I put them in there. I mean, I look at this seat on this saddle on the left, and either one, but the left one I can see a little better. And it's just got a whole different curvature to it than a Western saddle does. A Western saddle, to me, kind of comes down, almost goes flat in the middle, and then back up at the back. So you're sitting in it, but you're not leaning back like this.
Yeah, it's for working, not for
working,
not for pleasure riding or just traveling.
And these are new made saddles, and I believe I saw that they were selling these saddles, and this may be a factory type thing now, this group, I don't know. They were $3,000 for a basic saddle, I think.
Yeah.
And so you can buy a saddle like this made today. I mean, there are people that do that. And in fact, the next slide, please. That's what I used to have to say.
I can't do that.
Here, these are, Tim, keep your hand off the trigger. These are some new made saddles that are much along the same lines as plantation saddles, but which have been somewhat adapted for trail riding. And this is what people are riding today. People back east, well, not all of them, but people back east who are really into trail riding, which is a big deal back here, are quite possibly riding in this kind of a saddle. One of these. I mean, and that one in the middle, I think that one in the middle is actually a neat looking saddle.
Gorgeous. And that one on the left is too.
Yeah, it is.
And a lot of we have a lot of people that recreate the Pony Express, do the Pony Express trail ride
Right.
every year. They got a big event they do every year. Comes right by the house here. And a lot of those people are riding those hornless. That saddle on the left is more like a Western saddle that's basically just doesn't have a horn.
It just doesn't have a horn.
Because you don't need a horn if you're not roping cattle.
Yeah, and like I said, when I was a kid,
And if you reach up there and grab it, you're a sissy.
My cousins and uncle, they used to tell me if you reach up and grab it, the first thing that's what makes you get thrown off. So I never wanted to grab the horn because I was afraid I'd get thrown off.
If you see cowboys like riding a bad horse, it just blows up on them when they're branding or whatever. Not maybe a bad horse, but maybe just a young horse. One of those photos you had that showed the Cheyenne roll, and it's a fold of leather of like 4 layers of leather behind the cantle, and you can reach back and grab that.
I've seen them do that.
Or you can just grab your rope, which is right by your right leg, typically by your right knee. You just reach up and grab your rope, and you can ride them out a little better that way. But if you grab the horn, you're a sissy.
Well, like this saddle in the middle, I'm not sure if that's the exact one, but that I believe it is though. That is like an endurance trail saddle.
That's what they're riding on these Pony Express deals.
And they do like 100, even back here, they'll do like 100 miles through the mountains, and that's the kind of saddles they're sitting in.
Yep.
Because they're more comfortable to ride that distance, And there's some different ones that are similar in different ways, but these are more Western. You can see that big old. This is a Mexican Tejana.
That's like a Wade. That's almost like a Wade, but it's an older style. It's an older style that there's the, stirrup leathers are over the tree and down through the slot, not built like a modern saddle. I love those saddles right there. Those are the original cowboy saddles.
I'd never seen one exactly like this till I started doing this research.
Those saddles kind of came out of Mexico, and the Texans modified them a bit just to fit for cow work, and I love that saddle.
The saddle in the middle is sort of a compromise between maybe an Eastern style and a Western. It's called a Natchez saddle, and it was made they think it was made in the 1840s to early 50s. And it's even, it's got a name. It's the Dixon Water Saddlery Company out of Natchez. And that they actually named these saddles after where they came from.
Right.
Which it's interesting to me. I look at this saddle, and even compared to this Tejano saddle, which is, beefy where it needs to be and light and small where it don't. But look at just this saddle, the horn is fairly big, not little bitty, but the cantle looks thin and light to me. It doesn't look, it's kind of tall, and it's leaned back a little bit more. So there's a mix of styles. There we go. There goes the other one. Bear with me a minute. Look at this. Admire the saddle on the right. That's a decorated silvered up saddle for show, for parade. You see these you see a lot of these kind of saddles being ridden in the Rose Parade every year on TV, if you've ever watched the Rose Parade. And this one's not, I've seen some much more elaborate than that. But almost always that kind of a saddle, it's all dolled up like that, is a Western style saddle or a Mexican style saddle.
Right. And that's the kind of saddle Roy Rogers and Gene Autry rode.
Yeah.
They always rode really, really, really fancy saddles, because that's what cowboys was supposed to ride.
That's right.
Only They didn't, but but the
Okay.
movies told you they did.
I just realized I took a picture out and forgot to put another one back in. But so now we're going to migrate up to one of the saddles that we wanted to talk about the most. So now from here on out, it's going to be a little bit more, not detailed, but Mark's going to maybe do some show and tell. We're going to, but the next saddle I've got, well, no, this isn't it. This is another version of a southern saddle. Yeah,
You
I don't
can see that sheep fleece underneath
right
that
here.
skirt right there.
And those were sewn in, so you weren't changing that piece of fleece. If it got matted down, it was a piece of work to fix that or change.
Yeah, you had to tear the saddle apart to put a new one on.
Yeah.
It's a pain in the backside is what
I can't remember what saddle I took off. I had another saddle on here and I took it out for some reason. Probably because I had it duplicated. I'm always doing that. But anyway, that's another. That saddle's got a much higher back, but it's also, it's a comfort looking saddle. I mean, it just looks like it is. Whoops. Okay, now we're going to move up to the McClellan saddle because this is something I've always thought were neat. Didn't know what they were till I was probably in my 20s, maybe 30s, and I got one from somebody. That saddle to this day, I believe, is at your dad's in the shop.
It's on a saddle stand out in the shop.
And, it needed a bunch of work, of course, which I didn't do it at the time. Well, I still don't, but I'd love to mess with it. But anyway, this is a McClellan saddle. And and I'll show you better pictures here just in a minute. This one's got an Army top blanket beneath it for a saddle blanket, more probably for this stand. But the U.S. Army, this would have been close at least to a U.S. Army issued saddle that somebody in the cavalry would have been riding on after 1858 or 59, because that's when this saddle became the official saddle for cavalry and horses in the Army, U.S. Army. And this saddle actually was used up until, well, there's still some out there actually.
1940s, they were still. Yeah. Well, and they're probably still building a few for when
they are building them.
If the president passes and they do a honor ride or whatever and to Arlington or whatever, they still use this saddle.
Yeah, the saddle that, if you've ever seen Mark saying, if somebody like a president passes away, and they do the parade and the funeral procession, probably not called a parade exactly, there's always a military escort. And usually there'll be a McClellan saddle that's clean, all polished up and shiny, with a pair of boots turned backwards that represents a fallen leader, soldier, whatever, in this case, a leader. And to this day, that's what they use. And when I say they were used up until the 40s, I mean horses that they still use for occasions like that still wear this saddle if it's a military thing. I mean, they still use McClellan style saddles. They may be newer made, they may be different, and then again, they might be the same saddle that somebody rode in 1935. They've just been taken care of. So the Army, sometime between the Mexican War, 1840s, early 1850s, 1830s, 1840s, there wasn't, I don't know if there was an actual standard military saddle for the U.S. Army, but Captain McClellan, who became the McClellan that was the head of the Union Army 2 or 3 different times during the Civil War, till Lincoln finally got tired of fooling with him. This saddle gets named for him. Now, he didn't really invent the whole thing. He went out and found saddles from all over. He actually traveled the world and got saddles sent into America, and they took parts off one and put them on another, and they kind of figured out what other people were using. And this very saddle right here was sent from the U.S. Army to, no, this one's in Fort Kearny. There's another one here in a minute that was sent to the Danish is in a Danish museum. I think Danish museum. It's one of the Scandinavian countries that they asked for in like the 1860s to be sent to them so they could have it for display. And there's one over there sitting on a saddle horse right now that's, on display over there. But anyway, this is the saddle. As you can tell by looking, it's lightweight. It's not got a horn on it because they didn't need horns, but it's got lots of places to tie things up and lots of rings. And it's open in the middle, which is airier and makes it lighter too. And I don't know if those are official saddlebags on that one, but I've got pictures of issue bags here in a minute. So that's a McClellan saddle, and like I said, they rode these saddles into World War One when they had cavalry units. My grandfather was in some kind of a horse unit in the Army in World War One. I don't know if he was like a teamster kind of horse guy or if he was in a cavalry unit, but he rode. That's why I'd like to go back and look at the saddles. I'd like to see.
And they had a version of a McClellan saddle that was just for teamsters.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, that makes sense.
That it was beefier than the cavalry version. But I've always been in love with these saddles. I mean, just the thought of them, they're fun to ride, and they're.
Well, you've ridden some, right?
A lot.
Yeah.
And they as you get older, they work on your knees a little bit more than a Western saddle does. But
you were telling me that. I never thought about that.
They're really, well, it's just because it's that little bitty stirrup leather. And
this is some new made ones. And what you said that you can still get them. Well, these are made. I didn't write down who these were made by, but these are two. And one of the big markets for these saddles today are reenactors.
Yeah,
Civil War and maybe up to World War One cavalry people that are into reenacting military.
But they've really taken liberties.
Oh, sure they have, but it's still basically a McClellan.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not exactly, but anyway, there's stuff out there. And the next two are originals that are on display right there. I don't know where these are at, but they're
if you want to see a lot of them, you go to Kearney, Nebraska.
Oh, I bet, yeah.
And there's a ton of. They got that black one would be a Indian Wars period McClellan because they stained them black, and then they went to that russet color I think about 1898 or somewhere.
I read that. You mentioned that, and I read about that. They changed that color.
But that one's fully rigged. That one, well, both of those are fully rigged. They show how you can tie a lot of stuff on that saddle. That little bitty tiny saddle.
Well, this one, I imagine when I think about a cavalry saddle and them going out on some kind of mission, I actually think about them having their bedroll and their overcoat or whatever tied up to the back of the saddle. I think of this one on the left. But the one on the right actually has more stuff that they could use. There's a picket line, there's saddlebags that can tie more stuff on that. There's a scabbard for their carbine because cavalry usually carried a carbine and usually some kind of sidearm. I wanted to ask Mark about this big old. This is the cinch, and this could be, and I've got a picture here in a minute. Mark's got one. This may be made out of horsehair. Some of them are wool and some of them are horse. Mark, this cinch on the saddle, well, both of them, but this one on the right in particular, that's got that. Is that disc or that ring? Is that significant for some other than just a normal?
It was called a cinch safe.
And
it protected the part where the horsehair cinch met the ring, so there could be no wear on it.
No wear from above, like from their legs or rubbing.
Yeah, so the ring would come out at the bottom, but that was not attached to the cinch. but the cinch itself was totally protected at the top. So where it met the ring, you just wouldn't be able to wear that. And they literally those were lined in sheep's fleece as well.
Well, you can see that if you can't see it as well in the next picture, I think you can. But the one on the left, you can see that ring and where the cinches connect to that. So that's covering that to protect that.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Now these two are variations. This one, this saddle, or both of these maybe, are actually in the National Museum of American History. So I don't know all the details. They're obviously a little different, but they're McClellan style saddles.
And they're just rawhide.
And they're just rawhide. Yeah, they're not covered with extra leather. I read somewhere that they did this a lot and then later on went to leather because it rode better or wore better or whatever. They did go to doing that.
It's just more comfortable.
And the one on the right again, it's got a lot of stuff hanging off of it that very well could have been hanging off of it.
But like a lot of even old cowboy saddles where there was a lot of exposed rawhide, and it's more comfortable to sit on a piece of saddle leather than it is
rawhide.
That hard old rawhide and wood. And guys would cover those with a buffalo hide or something just so it's more comfortable.
I don't know how many of these I've got next coming up because I'm getting ready to move into some of your saddles. I'll just give you a heads up. But this saddle, we talked about this a little bit. Well, not this one in particular, but this saddle was a Confederate saddle during the Civil War, and the South was not industrialized like the North, and they had not got standardized so much on their saddles, and they were still making saddles and figuring things out, and eventually used a lot of McClellans when they could get them. Mark can comment on that in a minute. But this saddle was actually Robert E. Lee's saddle, and it was donated to the museum in Richmond, Virginia, that's dedicated to him. Whatever. And this was made by Grimsley, and it's a modified form of that to make it was kind of a combination. And this was something more like what they might have had in the Mexican War kind of pre-McClellan actually. But Robert E. Lee rode this one right on up. He rode this on Traveler right up through the Civil War, so he probably got it during the Mexican War, and kept it or used it all the way through. And to me, it looks almost like the way the seat itself was made. It looks like it's that plantation style of stuffing or padding, and but then the rest of it is starting to look more like a McClellan with the holes in it and the way it's made. Anyway, different variation. And then we get to that little shop out in Wyoming, and that is Hams Fork Saddlery. And I apologize. This is Sammy's saddle here. Maybe that one is too. No, I don't know that one.
I built that other one for another young man.
Okay, but this is Sammy's.
That's Sam's saddle, yeah.
And Mark, you did all the tool work and everything on this, right?
Yep, everything that's done on both of them, every single bit of it, except for making the tree. I didn't make the tree or the stirrups.
But that's some handy, and this is a basket weave pattern, the one on the left. And I'm not sure about this one, but I know this one over here on the right is the Charlie Russell saddle. And now that I look at them, I should have realized that.
That saddle on the left is the same one we just saw with the basket weave.
Oh, okay.
And then the saddle on the right was the first saddle I ever built. A friend of mine wanted me to build that saddle. He grew up in Charlie Russell country, and he wanted a Charlie Russell saddle. And so I got as many photos of that saddle as I could find, and I found a tree that looked similar, and built that saddle with square skirts. You can see the saddle on the left has rounded skirts.
Mm-hmm.
The square skirt, which I prefer personally, but the square skirts are traditional cowboy saddles from particularly made in Wyoming. And
Yeah,
the guy that built that saddle was a gentleman named Frank Meany, and out of Cheyenne, Wyoming.
This is more, to me, this is more of a square skirted saddle up here. Not quite the same, but I mean, that's what I thought of when I thought of that. I saw that one originally.
Well, that bottom saddle there on the right is square skirts with round skirts on top of it. It's not traditional either way, but
oh, I got you. I see what they've done there. Anyway, so back to what you were talking about. So you got pictures of this. That's all you had to go by. Had you ever seen the original saddle?
No, I've seen several of Frank's original saddles that he was building at the time. And this saddle is based off of the saddle that he built for Charlie Russell, that he rode for the rest of his dang life. He bought it when he was a young cowboy, and he rode the darn thing. It's in Montana somewhere. It's probably in a Russell museum, but I put his bison head on the back of it, tooled it into the cantle, and his logo that he used on all of his paintings, and tried to stay faithful to the
design style,
to the original
saddle.
But and
Diana
then
has a question.
that's Dave Stamey's guitar.
Yeah, that's right. He was. Some of you folks.
Dave Stamey was singing at my buddy's place, singing at a community hall they have down there, and that's his guitar and the saddle I built for Terry.
And they used this photograph for something, or one of these photographs for something, didn't they? For some kind of.
That was for advertising for the concert.
So Diana has a question. She said, "How did you learn how to do this, Mark?"
Books. I have 3 books that a guy named Al Stoneman wrote for Tandy Leather back in the day.
Oh, yes.
How to Build Saddles, volume 1, 2, and 3. And I've been around saddles my whole life and kind of could figure something. And my dad was big into tooling and that kind of stuff. So,
I mean, let me make a comment, sir, here. There's something unique about I don't know how far this goes up and down the ladder, but there's something unique about the Zorn's men, at least the 2 I know, or know fairly well, that are extremely artistic. And when they look at something like that, like he said, his dad was into tooling, they can do it. I mean, they just seem to be able to do it. Mark can carve things in leather and wood, or hell, probably chip it out of stone. It's just natural. I mean, I have to believe there's some genetics working there, because everybody can't do that. I can't do that. And you just have always been able to take
I've been blessed.
You've been blessed.
Definitely blessed with.
I could work mechanical stuff.
And none of it is good for today's society. Not a dang bit of it, but
well, that don't matter. I would probably beg to disagree on some of that, but I get what you're saying. He can do that.
The stuff I'm interested in is all like way out of date.
But that's the thing. The stuff like this may be out of date, but it's not out of use, because there's still a lot of people riding horses and doing stuff. That's like Eastern saddles I mentioned earlier, there's a big market for some of that back here because people are trail riding and endurance riding and just doing things like the Pony Express ride.
Who's got the bandage on their head there on the TV? I was watching a cowboy movie of some kind.
Garnets. That's Matt Dillon, buddy.
Oh, he got shot in the head, I think, or hit. Yeah.
I think so.
But that saddle in that photo, it's roped many a cow, and my boy's saddle too. They both. That one of Terry's, it's been well loved and well used, but it not for cowboy stuff. Not
That's Creekmore saddle.
That's Creekmore saddle. It's not been used for
roping
actual cow work, maybe moving cows, but not roping cows.
Terry that he's talking about, if you might not remember, but if you may think that rings a bell, is the guy he went to Africa with.
He's the guy I went to Africa with, yeah.
So, there's a circle happening there.
So I was talking at a meeting one day. We were at a meeting somewhere together, and I was talking about I'm getting ready to start thinking about building saddles, and he's like, well, here, let me give you a task. And that's how it started. So
let me make an order right now.
I'm putting in my order right now.
Now this next picture is out of sequence, but I put it in there so you can see something else we've been talking about, more or less at least. And that's a tree. And I guess this is more of a modern tree. It looks to me like that's fiberglass or something. May not be, but
I think it's a rawhide tree, but it's
maybe it is.
They've already started to put their seed in. That pink looking stuff is leather. That's a ground seat they're already put on that tree.
So anyway, I wanted to put that in there because we've been talking about the tree and stuff, and while that's not the only style, that's the foundation of the saddle there, or a saddle, one type. And I think now
a million trees.
So now, yes. And that one's got really long swells. They come down. Maybe they're not even swells at that point. But you can see this curve where a cowboy's leg would fit up against that. Or to me, that's what it looks like.
And it's probably a barrel racer's saddle, or maybe a cutting horse saddle.
Something you got to hang on to that's moving right and left, or
But you're not really. That's not really a working saddle. I mean, I would consider that some kind of competition saddle, or probably.
So now we get back to your house, and I didn't want to get too far away from the Zorn shop, but these are two. I don't know which one's which now. I didn't know exactly on the picture.
So that's the same saddle.
This is the same one.
Yes, I have two McClellan saddles, and they're both in disrepair and need TLC and baby, and I need to do some work to them. The thing that's always interested me about McClellan saddles is that if you're looking at the pommel, the front of the saddle, if you're in the rider's position looking at the front,
right here.
And that's also that photo on the right.
It's just this piece in close up.
And all of them had a seat measurement. That's a 12-inch seat on that saddle, and the other one I own is an 11-inch seat.
And I got a picture of it too. Hopefully, I've got it together right.
And I don't know if it's. I don't know. And there you can see the backup. Just for a second. That there's a horsehair cinch with the keepers on it,
which is laying across the saddle.
Yeah, it's laying across the middle of the saddle, looking down on the top of it. But both of my saddles are missing hardware pieces of metal that go on them. And I found a guy that makes all of them.
I was going to say, me too. I found somebody that makes it. So.
And they're historically accurate. They're made pretty much the same. They were made from originals, and they're the real kind of deal, and they're made out of the same materials. And so I have replacement parts that I need to, one day when the work's all done, I'll get around to fixing these 2 saddles. But
I also found something else. I was reading and studying about these saddles, and reading about how the industry of making saddles for the military or the U.S. government kind of went, and who did what, especially in the Civil War period, because that's when we suddenly needed saddles. Same thing happened before World War I believe.
Right.
But they talked about they showed some trees and different manufacturers, and I was going to ask you about this. They showed the label, there's almost always a plate like similar to this but different shape that says who made the tree. Do you have those? Your saddles, either one of these have that? And they're usually in different places, and it did say sometimes they're not convenient to see. But
yeah, I have not looked for those on
I'll
these.
show you the pictures of them.
But they're they're probably under a skirt or something. It's like, under the fleece or something where you just can't see it.
And they didn't always necessarily put them in the same place. So that part I'm getting to is there might have been 5 different manufacturers in 1861.
Right.
That were building saddles or building trees, at least for saddles, for the U.S. government and the Union cavalry. And usually they have that plate on them that says so.
It's kind of like, machine rifles, machine guns. You had Sears and Roebuck building that stuff, and Tiffany's and Browning, and all these companies. They all played, and they all made the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we need your company to build this many of this rifle, and this company build this many of this rifle, and
and that goes to a lot of things. And World War II is a really good example of that because of the size of that whole effort. And same thing, you can model 1911 pistol, which everybody calls a Colt, basically, which was the U.S. military sidearm till the 80s or 90s, whenever. That designed by John Browning, built by Colt originally, but if you go to looking during the war, they were made by the Singer Sewing Machine Company. They were made by I don't know if not General Motors, GE, somebody else. There was like 5 or 6 manufacturers. They all built exactly the same pistol. And then in that case for the military, but they're all different companies. Airplanes were the same way.
Right.
General Motors and Ford, and they all took assembly lines out of the car market and built airplanes for the U.S. government during the war.
Right.
It's some of that there. I think in Alabama they built B-24s and then B-29s, and I think that was a General Motors plant. Chrysler built tanks, and and saddles were just like that. In that day, they were farmed out to different people to build a standard saddle, and that's what they did.
Right.
So these probably have a tag on them somewhere, and very well could be by 2 different manufacturers. That'd be interesting if you ever see them. But
I'll look for them.
I'll give you some pictures of a couple just so you see what they look, because they're not made like these. They're usually square or elongated in some way, but they're not usually made like the Shield or the other round, just the oval discussions. And that one is the other one I backed up to and then came back to it. And then, as you can see right here, That is an 11-inch seat versus the other one, which was a 12-inch seat.
And the seat that I ride in my saddle is 15 and a half inches in my Western saddle.
Western saddle.
But I can fit in either of these two saddles. So I'm not sure where they were measuring from where to where to say that's an 11 or that's a 12. Most of them are that size, though. You don't see a lot of 13, 14, plus inch seats. Most of them were, I guess, for little bitty wasted away skinny cavalry troop guys that were probably 5'2".
I wonder if they got any smaller than an 11, because I don't think I've seen a 10, but there may be some.
I've never seen a 10, but 11s and 12s are the most common I've ever seen. And
so that probably fits your average.
Yeah, it was just for your average trooper. And like, well, that's not big enough for me. Well, tough. Make it. What size boot do you wear? I wear a 10, just like everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. Now I got a couple of books here I wanted to just put up here for show and tell. I should have looked for a picture of the one, the other one that you told me about, because I know those books. We've talked about those books many times together about, and what you learned from them. But I put these in there because this one on the left is, if you look at it, you sort of see the development pattern there from Western to English to plantation. I mean, there's a mix in that book, whereas the one on the right was primarily, I just realized they're by the same guy. It was primarily how the Confederacy in the South dealt with their lack of manufacturing capability and what kind of saddles they built and used for the Civil War, and some of their other equipment, which was very, very different than the North. Well, thank you, Carol, for coming in, and everybody else. And I know we've gone long. I started late. I didn't want to cut out. I knew this would probably be a long show just because we'd talk about it. But if you get time and you are interested, I've got some really good links here. I'll pop them up. You can go back and see them later on the show. These should all be active, I hope. I don't know for sure, but they should be. I think you guys can usually click on those. And I learned stuff from watching this, not only about saddles, but just about the whole horse culture. I now understand why it was so common for people I knew growing up in my families, to have horse and horse equipment and horse-drawn wagons and horse-drawn plows, because there was such a strong culture of horses in this whole area. Kentucky, Ohio, the Appalachian Strip, and of course Kentucky. You think of Kentucky, I think of race horses. You think of Tennessee. A lot of people think of a Tennessee walking horse, but a lot of gaited horses actually came from this part of the world, not just walking horses. In Kentucky too. That Kentucky and its horses at the bottom there is probably the longest video there, maybe, and I thought it was quite interesting. It's about, they talk to families who grew up with horses, and have a lot of pictures of horses. I wonder, they both of them make saddles too. But
I have photos of my great grandpa, my great great grandpa, sitting riding a McClellan saddle in Kentucky. He was too young for the war, but he had a McClellan saddle that I assume the family had, gathered from. He had uncles that were cavalry officers or cavalry troops, not officers. And then I have photos of my grandfather and his uncles, like horseback. I think my grandpa was actually riding my dad's dad. I think he was actually on a mule in the photo I have of him horseback when he was a boy. And
And
then
they were getting
mom's dad, like I said, he was born in 1898, and he sold fuller brushes all up, and he went clear to Virginia and Tennessee and
Southern Ohio. That's where they lived.
Yeah, from Southern Ohio on a mule. Because his parents didn't want him to go to the mines. They didn't want him to be a coal miner. That's why they'd emigrated from Wales.
Okay.
So all of his brothers, his older brothers, everyone, he was the youngest boy. All of his older brothers, he ended up in the goddamn coal mines anyway. And they had immigrated from Wales to America just to keep the boys from growing up in a coal mine. And they still ended up in the coal mines.
Wow. I didn't realize that part. I didn't think about that part. Well, that's a whole nother story. Dad met some interesting gentlemen. I don't know if they were related to us. They could have been. I can't remember that part because I have have ancestry from Wales also, and they brought him a piece of Wales slate, I believe, that was quarried or mined in Wales, and it had I don't know what happened to this. I'd love to know. Hopefully my brothers got it, but it was flat, and it had a really well done etching or drawing, or I don't know how, carving, I guess, of a horse. And
cool.
Working, I think, pulling a wagon, or maybe working in slate business or whatever.
Right.
And really, really neat. And they gave that to Dad and left. They came over. He met them literally on what might as well be called outlaw radio. Back when CB radios got so big in the 70s and 80s, Dad got into radios. And he never had a ham license, but he did have a boosted up radio that at night he could flip up a switch and, black out everybody's TV in the neighborhood or something. And he would get on that radio and just sit there and call out his call sign for hours at a time and talk to people. And he met these guys in Wales, and he would talk to them on a regular basis when the signals were skipping, and they could talk to each other. And eventually they came to the United States, and Dad was one of the first places they came to visit because they knew it from that. It was neat. The whole story was kind of neat. I wasn't living up there then. I think that's when we were already in Nashville, but anyway, it was a cool story. But like I said, my granddad, his father, I don't know if he had background in the military like that, but they had a barn full of tack and stuff. Maybe not to the extent my other uncles did, and that side of the family, my grandfather, because Mom's dad and her family were really into horses, and ham radios were the first cell phone. That's true. They had lots of stuff, and I wish I could go back. They had a tack room I remember being full of stuff, most of which we never touched because it didn't fit the ponies, and we just had the saddles we used on the ponies were pretty much what we rode with.
Right.
If we rode with a saddle at all. But, I remember there being all kinds of stuff in that tack room. And I wish I could go back and see what was there. I have a picture somewhere of my grandfather holding a horse and me sitting on the back of it, maybe wearing a cowboy hat and a pair of boots. Not sure about that part, but I was probably 3 or 4 years old at that time, because he passed away when I was either 4 or 5. So it couldn't have been too long before he passed away. But I'd like to find that picture somewhere. I've got a copy of that, I'm sure. But horses were a fairly big deal over there. They had plow horses. They plowed fields for people, gardens. He had they had horses, and like I said, Dad's dad must have had horses. It was just before my time because he had the stuff. They had horse-drawn plows and horse-drawn rakes.
No, I mean back. You go not too far back. That's all you had.
Well, yeah.
Nobody had tractors. You had wagons and horses, and if you lived in the country, you had critters.
Up until the point where you might have been able to afford to get you a little Ford tractor.
Right.
The most common tractor on farms in this part of the world were little Ford tractors. Hell, everybody and their brother had one if they had a tractor at all. My neighbors still have little Ford tractors just right around the house. I see them using them.
I'd give my teeth for like a little 8-in or something like that.
Well, I'm sure we could find you one.
Yeah, but they're not. I see them every now and again. They're proud of them.
No, I bet they are.
If they're still operational.
Now, and that was probably rushed. Maybe too rushed in some parts. It was an overview. We skipped a lot of stuff. I would love to sit down with Mark. You may not want to do this ever. We may not ever get this done. I would love to show how you do a few things on the screen. Just some minor stuff just to show people how it works. I think that'd be fascinating.
We could probably do that sometime.
So sometime we'll try to work on that, even if it's a pre-recorded thing that we just post.
I got a
might be an excuse for me to come out there and film you.
I got a buddy that I hear wants a saddle. He hadn't called me, but he's been talking to Sammy that he wants. So I got to figure out what he's wanting and
let Sammy grease the skids a little bit before he comes over and gets serious.
Well, I mean, I worked with the man for 30 years, so
okay.
But he's he's like, I'm needing me a new saddle. I want Mark to build me a new saddle, and I'm like, well, then call me, damn it. Pardon my French.
Let's get serious about it. Mule saddles, sometimes, I want to do this before we close up here, but mule saddles sometimes are different than horse saddles. Is that not correct?
That's true.
Well, did they make McClellan saddles for mules, or did they just kind of fit them all?
Well, they used that. McClellan built that Teamsters kind of saddle that they used on mules a lot.
That makes sense.
That thing had way more rigging on it. The Teamster saddle had way more rigging on it. It might have even had a horn now that I'm thinking about it. I have never personally had one in my hands, but it was for carrying gear. It'd carry a guy, but they were mostly made for ferrying gear. They weren't pack saddles like a traditional pack saddle.
Right.
Which that old oxbow pack saddle, that literally been using those since Genghis Khan. And literally.
Yeah, literally.
It's never really, it's worked for a gazillion years, and people have redesigned the pack saddle, and they're making deckers and all kind of different kind of pack saddles now, but that old wooden sawbuck kind of a pack saddle, they still build them. They've always been functional.
Okay, I lost something here. Bear with me just a minute. I was going to see if I can show something. Since I mentioned it, I just happened to find one. Let me see if I can show it. Now this is going to work. I can show that. That's a mule saddle. It says that's a McClellan built for a mule. It's not necessarily. It may not be the Teamsters one, or it may be a version of it. But it says it was made for a mule.
It's got a horn on it. See, that's that.
Oh, it does have a horn. Yeah. Okay, I see it now. I couldn't see it. I do now. Okay, there you go. That's what you were just talking about.
Yeah, that's the saddle.
I don't think I can make it any bigger. No.
And they were using that, guys were using that during World War II. There were outfits that were trained as mule packers for the South Pacific.
Yep.
And they were packing, some of those Raider that one Raider battalion that was formed, Raider battalion that was formed that rescued the boys at Cabana Twin.
Yeah.
They were trained as, they were all like Western boys were trained as mule packers. And they did some of that early in the war, and then they turned into a, you don't want to make them mad kind of an outfit.
Yeah.
That was really good at what they did. So
exactly. Kind of what became LERPs and
yeah, those guys.
Other groups of similar.
I can't think of the movie. There's a book that Hampton Sides wrote. Maybe it's called The Ghost Soldiers. I can't think of it. I have it. But
I don't know if I have that or not.
The movie was really well done. They did a really good job with it.
Was it called The Ghost Soldiers too?
It may be. It had oh, I can't think of the guy's name because I'm old, dang it. Anyway, I think the book was Ghost Soldiers.
Yeah, I got it right here. Hampton.
Hampton Sides.
Yeah, you rotten bastard. It wouldn't let me open that sign. Yeah, Amazon's got the book, a copy of the book or a version of the book. That's actually not it. That's another one about them. That's not the same book you just told me about. But I've got, Hampton Sides. I don't know that book. I'll have to look for that. Brenda's not.
I didn't tell him to do that, Brenda.
It's all right. She's gonna find out anyway because I'm gonna be bidding on those H.G. Wells books. You can bet you. That just got me all excited. That's not, you can't see it, but here's a copy of that book if anybody was interested in it. And I can't find me again. Yep, there I am.
He's a talented guy, great author. I like his work, and he did a really good job on that. That's it right there.
And that copy is on eBay for $1.83, which sounds extremely cheap. I wonder why. That's probably a paperback, but
mine is.
And maybe that's all there is. But that is really cheap. So I don't know what kind of shape it is. That cover looks good if that's the same book. But anyway, that's a copy of what he was just talking about. Well, and we've talked about Reckless, the Marine Corps horse, Sergeant Reckless, that was packed and used by the Marines in Korea.
I could have met her, but I don't.
Yeah, you could have.
I don't recall. I think Dad said we never met her.
Well, that's just where she lived on that base, so.
Yeah, she was there when we were there, so.
Well, Brenda, I found a set of books by H.G. Wells that the girls have on this auction.
Well, she says she likes H.G. Wells.
I know. That's why I'm making a big deal out of it, because I should have open permission to.
That'd be that.
Face.
I've never heard he did a series like that, but that'd be
cool. Me either. But it looks neat. There's a lot of pictures, drawings, and other stuff in it. I'm really anxious to get a good look at it. Anyway, well, guys, who's left and who's gone? Oh, everybody needs to go. I need to go. I feel the call of nature, and probably more information TMI. But Marcus, I'll send you some pictures of where they put those tags, and if you ever are at that location on your saddle, maybe you'll see one. I just thought that was really cool and be neat to know where your saddle came from, or who
Yeah.
made for the military. But anyway, so everybody have a great rest of your weekend. If you're still here, if you haven't, if you're gone, thank you anyway. Tina, if you're coming back to watch this again, I hope you got to look at some of the videos. Mark, you ought to check out some of those videos, or I'll send you the links.
I will.
A couple of those are really good. I think you'd appreciate the one about Kentucky, and just there's some neat stuff in there. So, but anyway, have a good time. Will you do anything else this weekend?
Me?
Yeah, you got family over or anything?
We got a grandboy coming here anytime. I don't know when. Caitlin and I are going to boil down currant berries and
Making jelly.
Start thinking about making jelly.
Cool.
And then we got a rodeo tomorrow. So.
Oh, really? Where at?
Evanston.
Oh.
The PRCA rodeo.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, so we'll be to that tomorrow. And and we got afternoon at one of the son-in-laws this afternoon for eating.
I don't know what Brenda says she's trying to do. I think she misspoke. It misspoke something. I don't know what seal around the corner means. Maybe she's saying she's going to sneak out of the room or something. I'm not sure there. Anyway, all right. Well, have fun, and I'll talk to you in a day or two. And
talk to you soon.
See you, brother.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.